The last bell of the day rang through the small school, echoing down the narrow halls that smelled faintly of chalk and old wooden desks. Most teachers were already packing up, eager to go home. But one man stayed behind, as he always did. He was the kind of teacher who never seemed to rush, even when life gave him 1,000 reasons to. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, his hands dusty from writing on the blackboard. His classroom was quiet now, filled only with the soft ticking of a clock and the faint hum of the ceiling fan that worked half-heartedly. He wasn't rich, far from it. His shoes had been polished so many times that they'd lost their shine. His watch had a tiny crack across the glass. He lived in a small rented room not far from school, where the roof leaked during heavy rain. But he never complained. His joy came from teaching. He believed deeply that knowledge and kindness could change anyone's life. That evening, as he gathered his books, a faint sound made him pause. At first, he thought it was the wind brushing against the windows. Then he heard it again, a quiet sob, muffled and shaky. It came from the back of the room. He frowned gently and walked toward the sound. There, sitting at the last bench, was a small girl. Her school bag was open, her notebook spread out before her, but she wasn't writing. Her shoulders shook as she tried to wipe her tears quickly, hoping no one would notice. He crouched beside her, his voice soft and kind. "Hey, are you okay? Did something happen?" The girl didn't answer. She kept her eyes on her notebook, silent tears falling onto the page. He sat down slowly on the next chair, not too close, just enough to make her feel safe. "You can tell me if something's wrong," he said quietly. Sometimes talking helps, still nothing. Her small fingers tightened around her pencil. He could tell she was trying to be strong, to hide whatever was breaking inside her. He smiled gently and reached into his bag. "You know," he said, "I was just about to eat this biscuit before heading home, but now I think I should share it." He pulled out a packet of plain biscuits and placed it on her desk. The girl hesitated for a moment before glancing at him. Her eyes were red and her face was pale. Slowly, she took one biscuit, nibbling it quietly. "That's better," he said softly. "Now you can tell me what's making you sad. I promise I won't get angry no matter what it is." A few seconds passed before her small voice broke the silence. "I don't like school anymore," she whispered. "Everyone is happy, but I'm not." He tilted his head slightly, his expression gentle. "Why not, little one? Did someone say something to you?" She shook her head. "No, it's not that." She paused, swallowing hard. "My mother is gone. She used to help me with my homework. She used to wait for me after school. Now nobody does." His heart sank. He didn't interrupt. He just let her talk. The girl continued, tears sliding down her cheeks. "My father works all the time. He drops me at school and leaves. He says he's busy. He doesn't even come inside when there's an event. Everyone else's parents do, but mine doesn't." The teacher stayed silent for a moment, feeling the weight of her words. Losing a parent was something no child should have to go through. And feeling unseen on top of that, it was too much for a heart so small. He finally spoke in a calm, soothing tone. "I'm sorry, my dear. That's a lot for someone your age to carry. But you know what? You're really brave. You're here, you're learning, and that's something your mother would be very proud of." The girl looked at him, a little unsure, but his warm eyes made her believe him. He smiled softly and said, "You know, sometimes the people we love are not gone. They just move into our hearts. They live there quietly, watching us, smiling when we do good things." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You really think she's watching me?" "I do," he replied, nodding. "And I think she's really happy that you're here today, learning and being brave." For the first time, the girl gave a tiny smile. It was small, but it carried a spark of comfort. The teacher glanced at the clock. It was getting late. The janitor had already turned off the lights in the hallway. Still, he didn't want her to leave while still sad. "Do you want me to walk you to the gate?" he asked. She nodded slowly. He helped her pack her bag and walked beside her through the empty corridor. The sun was almost down, painting the schoolyard in orange and gold. When they reached the gate, he asked gently, "Is someone coming to pick you up?" She pointed to a black car parked near the curb. It looked expensive, shiny, with tinted windows. "That's my father's car," she said softly. "He's always on the phone." The teacher smiled kindly. "Well, I hope one day he puts the phone down just to listen to your stories. You have so many worth hearing." She nodded again, clutching her bag, and whispered, "Thank you." He watched as she climbed into the car. He couldn't see the driver clearly, just a tall man in a suit, his face hidden behind the car window. The teacher turned to leave, unaware of how deeply this small encounter would change all their lives. That night, as he reached his little room, he dropped his bag on the table and sat by the window. The rain had started again, gentle but steady. He made a cup of tea, his mind replaying the girl's tearful face. He wondered about her life, the big car, the expensive clothes, but also the loneliness in her eyes. Money didn't fix everything, he thought. Sometimes the richest people are the ones who feel the emptiest inside. He smiled faintly and whispered to himself, maybe I should check on her tomorrow. The next day, he noticed her again during morning assembly. She stood quietly in line, her hair tied neatly, her eyes scanning the crowd nervously. When she saw him, she gave a small wave. It made him smile. Later in class, she worked harder than before. She raised her hand to answer questions, and when he praised her, she smiled shyly. It was a small change, but for him, it was everything. During lunch, while other teachers sat together chatting about salaries and complaints, he stayed in his classroom, marking papers. One of his colleagues stopped by and said, "You work too much, my friend." "Go easy on yourself," he chuckled softly. "I just want to make sure they all do well. That's all the reward I need." But deep down, he knew life wasn't easy. His pay barely covered rent and food. Some months he had to borrow money to survive. Yet he never showed his struggles. To his students, he was a symbol of patience and hope. That evening, as the sun dipped low, the little girl stayed behind again. This time she wasn't crying. She just sat quietly, drawing something in her notebook. He walked over and asked gently, "What are you drawing today?" She turned the book around. It was a picture of a small classroom with two people, a little girl and a teacher standing beside her. Beneath it, she had written in big, uneven letters, "My favorite place." He stared at the picture, his heart swelling with emotion. "That's beautiful," he said softly. "Can I keep it?" She shook her head quickly. "No, this one's for you." He smiled, touched more deeply than words could express. "Then I'll treasure it forever," he said sincerely. The school bell rang and she packed up again. Before leaving, she turned back and said, "You're kind, sir. You remind me of my mother." He froze for a moment, caught off guard by her words. Then he smiled and nodded. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever told me." When she left that day, he stayed seated for a long time, holding the small drawing in his hand. The evening light made the colors on the paper glow softly. It was more than just a drawing. It was a reminder that even the smallest act of kindness could touch someone's heart. Outside, the same black car waited at the gate. The tall man in the driver's seat looked up from his phone briefly, watching his daughter run out with a lighter step than usual. She climbed in, still smiling. The teacher didn't notice the man's curious glance through the mirror. He didn't know that the man sitting in that car wasn't just any parent. He was a powerful CEO. A man who had lost his wife and buried his emotions behind endless work. For now, the teacher only knew one thing, that somewhere in that quiet classroom a little girl had begun to heal. And for him that was enough. That night, as he placed the girl's drawing on his desk, beside a single flickering candle, he felt something he hadn't in a long time, hope. The next morning, the teacher arrived early as usual. The school was still quiet, the air cool with the scent of chalk dust and dew. He placed the little girl's drawing on his desk before starting his lessons for the day. Every time he looked at it, a faint smile tugged at his lips. It reminded him why he kept going despite the struggles. When the students began filling in, their chatter filled the air again. Among them was the little girl, holding her bag tightly to her chest. She walked straight to her seat and gave him a small smile. He smiled back, feeling something warm stir inside him, a sense of quiet responsibility. As the day went on, he noticed something different. The girl seemed more present. She raised her hand to answer questions, laughed softly with a classmate, and even helped another student pick up dropped pencils. It was as if the heavy cloud that used to hover over her had lifted slightly. During break time, while others ran outside, she stayed behind in the classroom, drawing in her notebook. The teacher walked over, careful not to interrupt her focus. "What are you drawing today?" he asked softly. She looked up and smiled shyly. "A tree," she said. "My mother said big trees protect people from the sun. I want to draw a tree like that." He nodded, looking at her paper. It's beautiful. You know, I think you're a little like that tree. You've been through storms, but you're still standing. Her eyes widened a bit. You really think so? Yes, he said with a gentle smile. And maybe one day you'll grow so tall that others will find comfort in your shade. The girl thought for a moment, then smiled again. This time, a genuine, bright smile. It made the classroom feel lighter. As the days passed, a quiet friendship began forming between them. It wasn't forced. It was simply the way kindness grows when it's watered with care. He would check on her during lessons, give her small words of encouragement, and make sure she was never left behind during group work. In return, she started leaving little notes on his desk, small pieces of paper with scribbles like, "Thank you for helping me," or "I had a good day today." He kept each one inside a drawer like precious treasures. But outside the classroom, his life remained a struggle. The rent was overdue again. The roof above his small room leaked and his shoes were wearing thin. Still, when he looked at those notes, something inside him whispered that everything would be all right. One evening after class, he was locking up when he saw her waiting again. The schoolyard was almost empty. The same black car stood near the gate, its engine quietly running. But this time she wasn't inside yet. She sat on a bench staring at the ground. He walked over slowly. "Is everything okay?" he asked. She looked up with a faint frown. "My father's on the phone again," she said softly. "He said he's too busy to talk right now." The teacher sat down beside her. "Maybe he's working on something important," he said carefully. "Grown-ups sometimes forget how time passes," she sighed. "He's always busy. He doesn't come to school events. He didn't even see my drawing at the exhibition. I wanted to show him." He looked at her for a moment, unsure what to say. He knew what it felt like to be unseen, to give your best and still go unnoticed. He wanted to tell her that her father surely cared deep down, but he also didn't want to dismiss her pain. So instead he said, "You know, sometimes love looks quiet. Some people don't know how to show it well, but that doesn't mean they don't feel it." She looked at him curiously. "Did your father love you quietly too?" He chuckled softly. "Maybe. He was a farmer. He didn't say much, but he always left an extra roti for me in the kitchen before going to work. I think that was his way of saying it." The girl smiled faintly. "My mother used to leave little notes in my lunchbox. She wrote things like, 'Be brave today.' I still have them." He nodded, touched by her innocence. "Then she's still talking to you, isn't she?" That made her smile again. "Maybe she is." The car door opened and a tall man stepped out, sharply dressed, holding his phone. He looked serious, distant. "Let's go," he said, barely glancing at the teacher. The girl stood, waved at her teacher, and climbed into the car. The man nodded slightly in thanks, though it was more of a polite gesture than genuine gratitude. The teacher nodded back, not realizing who the man really was or how deeply their lives were about to intertwine. That night, the teacher couldn't stop thinking about the child. He had seen many students come and go, but something about her loneliness struck him deeply. Maybe it was because he saw a reflection of his own childhood, the same quiet longing to be heard. The next morning, he brought an old storybook to class, one that had belonged to his mother. During reading time, he called the girl to read a page aloud. Her voice was soft at first, trembling a little, but as she read on, it grew steadier. When she finished, the class clapped and her cheeks turned pink with pride. The teacher smiled and said, "You see? You have a voice that deserves to be heard." Later that day, she approached him shyly. "Can I borrow this book?" she asked. "I want to read it at home." "Of course," he said warmly. "Just promise me you'll take care of it. It's very special." "I will," she promised. The next week, she returned it, carefully wrapped in a piece of cloth to keep it safe from dust. Inside, he found a small note tucked between the pages. It said, "I read it every night. It made me feel less alone." He didn't show it to anyone. He just kept it in the same drawer with the other notes. Meanwhile, the school principal had noticed the girl's sudden improvement. Her grades were rising, her confidence growing. "You've done wonders with her," the principal told the teacher one afternoon. Her father even called to ask about her progress. "That's the first time he's shown interest." The teacher nodded modestly. She just needed someone to listen, that's all. But inside, he felt something stir, a sense that he was finally doing something truly meaningful. Not for money, not for praise, but for someone's healing heart. One rainy afternoon, the girl came running into the classroom after everyone else had left. She was drenched, clutching her notebook. "What happened?" he asked, grabbing a towel from his bag. She looked up with big eyes.
My driver left early.
"I think he forgot me." He frowned gently and led her to sit down. "Don't worry. You can wait here until he comes back." She nodded, shivering a little. He poured her a cup of warm water from his flask and handed it to her. "Here, this will help." She held it close, smiling through her damp hair. "You're always kind," she said softly. "Why?" He laughed lightly. "Because when I was little, someone helped me when I was lost too. I never forgot how it felt." She tilted her head. "Who helped you?" "A stranger," he said, looking out the window. "I was lost in a busy market once. Everyone walked past me, but one woman stopped. She held my hand and took me home safely. She didn't even tell me her name, but I still remember her face." The girl listened, her eyes full of wonder. "So you're being that stranger for me now?" He smiled. "Maybe I am." The car returned soon after, and she waved goodbye. The man in the suit looked out again, this time noticing how gently the teacher had taken care of his daughter. For a moment, something flickered in his expression, curiosity, maybe even gratitude, before he turned away. Days turned into weeks. The girl's laughter became a regular sound in the classroom. She made friends, participated in games, and even started helping the teacher arrange books after school. He would sometimes tell her small stories about his village or how he became a teacher. She would listen, eyes wide, as if each word was a treasure. But beneath that growing warmth, something deeper was quietly forming, a connection that neither of them fully understood. She had found in him the comfort she missed at home, and he had found in her a reminder that his kindness still mattered in a world that often forgot simple goodness. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the school building, she walked up to his desk with something in her hands, a folded paper flower. She placed it carefully in front of him and said, "I made this for you." He looked at it, surprised. "It's beautiful. Why did you make it?" "Because you make me feel safe," she said simply. He couldn't speak for a moment. All he could do was smile, his eyes soft with emotion. He didn't know that small gesture, a paper flower made by a child's hand, would soon reach the heart of someone he never expected to meet. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between the teacher and the little girl grew quietly but strongly. She had started to open up more, sharing stories about her life, her mother, and her small fears. Every day he would notice subtle changes, a lighter step, a brighter smile, or a laugh that seemed to come from her very heart, rather than just out of habit. One afternoon, the teacher noticed her sitting alone on a bench outside the classroom. She wasn't drawing or reading this time. She was just staring at the sky, her small hands folded in her lap. He walked over and sat beside her. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. She shrugged. "I don't know. Everything, I guess. Sometimes I feel happy at school, but then I go home and it's quiet. Too quiet. I miss my mother." He nodded quietly, understanding all too well that emptiness that comes when someone is gone. "I know it hurts," he said gently. "I can't bring her back, but I can help you remember the love she gave you. And we can make some new happy moments too here at school." She looked up at him, eyes full of hope. "Do you really mean that?" "I do," he replied. "You're not alone anymore. Not while I'm around." Over the next few days, he made it a point to check on her more often. During lessons, he would call on her first, praising her ideas and encouraging her to speak confidently. At lunchtime, he would sit with her and ask about her drawings, her schoolwork, or even her small everyday worries. Slowly, her confidence grew. One day, he noticed her struggling with a math problem. Her small forehead was creased with concentration, and her pencil kept breaking as she tried to write the correct number. "Here," he said, taking the pencil gently from her hand. "Let's solve it together." She looked at him with wide eyes. "You'll help me?" "Of course," he said, kneeling beside her desk. Step by step, he explained the problem, showing her a way to understand it without fear. As she began to grasp it, her face lit up with a victorious smile. "I got it," she exclaimed, clapping her hands. He laughed softly. "Yes, you did. You worked hard and it paid off. See what happens when you believe in yourself?" The girl's eyes sparkled. "I think my mother would be proud of me." "She would," he said, his voice warm. "And I'm proud of you too." Little moments like these started to define their days. Sometimes he would catch her watching him quietly during lessons, a shy smile on her face. Sometimes she would leave. Little drawings or notes on his desk saying things like, "Thank you for helping me smile," or "You make school feel like home." He kept every single one in a drawer, treasuring them like small miracles. Meanwhile, outside of school, life continued in its usual rhythm. The black car would often be parked at the school gate, waiting to pick her up. The tall man inside rarely got out or interacted with her beyond polite words. The teacher had noticed this but did not pry. He knew that not everyone had the skills to show love even when they felt it. One afternoon, the school held a small exhibition. Every student was allowed to display art, essays, and creative projects. The little girl worked on a special essay, pouring her heart into words she had never shared before. It was about a teacher who had reminded her of her mother, someone who had listened to her when no one else did. On the day of the exhibition, the teacher watched from the back of the room as parents and students moved around, admiring the displays. When he reached her essay, he read it quietly. Each line was filled with innocence, gratitude, and the kind of raw honesty that only children could write. "She remembers everything," he whispered softly, touched more than he had expected. At that moment, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see the tall man from the car standing there, holding a folder. His face was serious, but there was a hint of something else in his eyes. Curiosity, maybe even concern. "Is this your student?" the man asked quietly, nodding toward the girl. The teacher nodded. "Yes, she's been working very hard. She's a bright, kind child." The man's gaze shifted to the essay in the teacher's hands. He scanned the words quickly, then looked up at the teacher again. "Did you write this?" "No," the teacher replied gently. "She wrote it herself." The man read the essay again, more slowly this time. His lips pressed together, and for the first time he seemed genuinely moved. She wrote about you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know she felt this way." The teacher looked at him, surprised. "She's been through a lot. I only tried to help her." "I see that now," the man said, his eyes softening. I haven't been around much." "She's missed a lot, hasn't she?" The teacher shook his head gently. "She missed some things, yes. But she's strong, and she's learning to smile again." The man stayed quiet for a moment, lost in thought. Then he said, "I want to meet you properly. Can we gonna have dinner sometime? I want to thank you." The teacher blinked in surprise. "Dinner?" "Yes," the man said softly. "I need to thank the person who has given my daughter hope again." The teacher hesitated. He had never been to a fancy restaurant. He didn't even own formal clothes. But something in the man's voice told him that this was important. I don't know what to say," he replied. "You don't need to say anything," the man said. "Just come." "That's enough." The little girl standing nearby noticed the exchange. She looked up at the teacher, her eyes bright with curiosity and excitement. She didn't say a word, but her small smile told him everything. Days passed before the dinner could happen. During that time, the teacher continued his routine, tutoring her after school, checking her homework, and making sure she felt safe and happy. Every evening, he would see her climb into the black car, waving goodbye with a tiny smile. Finally, the night of the dinner arrived. The teacher was nervous. He had never met the girl's father properly. He didn't know what to expect. He dressed in his best shirt, although it was simple and plain. He carried a small notebook, a habit he had developed to jot down thoughts and lessons during the day. When he arrived, he was led into a large, elegant dining room. The man was waiting, standing quietly by the table. He looked different than the man the teacher had seen in the car. Softer somehow, though still serious. "Thank you for coming," the man said, extending a hand. The teacher shook it gently. I didn't do much. I just helped her with her studies." The man smiled faintly. "It's more than you realize. You gave her something that I couldn't. Attention, care, and someone who truly listens. That's priceless." They talked quietly over dinner, the teacher sharing small stories about his students and his own life. The man listened, nodding and occasionally smiling. He told the teacher about his own struggles, losing his wife, the distance that had grown between him and his daughter, and how he had buried himself in work to cope. "I didn't know how to reach her," he admitted, his voice breaking slightly. "I thought giving her material comfort would be enough. But it wasn't. She needed someone who would see her, Hear her. And you did that. The teacher felt a lump in his throat. I only did what anyone would do, he said softly. No, the man said firmly. Not anyone. You gave her something rare. You gave her hope. The conversation lingered long into the evening. The teacher learned more about the girl's father, his love for his daughter, his regrets, and his desire to reconnect. But he also noticed something else, a quiet gratitude that went deeper than words. By the end of the night, the man had made a promise. He wanted to support the teacher's work with other children, to help provide resources for students who needed it most. He didn't just want to repay him for helping his daughter. He wanted to make sure that more children could experience the same care and attention that had changed her life. When the teacher left that night, he walked back to his small room feeling a mixture of disbelief and quiet joy. He had never imagined that his simple acts of kindness could touch someone so profoundly. The little girl, meanwhile, was asleep in her room, clutching the storybook the teacher had lent her. She had no idea that her essay had reached her father in such a powerful way. She only knew that her teacher had been there for her, every day helping her heal, and that was enough for her, for him, and unknowingly for her father as well. The days after that dinner, life at school continued, but something had shifted. The little girl smiled more easily, participated more fully, and even began helping other students who struggled. She had become a small beacon of kindness, just like her teacher. And the teacher? He continued to stay late, tutor students, and provide the same gentle guidance that had made such a difference in her life. But now he carried a quiet hope too, that his work might reach farther than he had ever imagined. It was a small, simple kind of hope, but sometimes that is enough to change everything. After that evening at dinner, something changed quietly between the little girl, her father, and the teacher. The man began to notice the small details he had missed before, the way she clutched her notebook, the careful way she organized her pencils, the little drawings she left around the house. He realized that his daughter had been holding on to memories of her mother and moments of care she had missed from him. And he understood that the teacher was the bridge between her past and her present, quietly filling the space that he himself had been unable to reach. The teacher continued his routine at school as usual. He stayed late, helping the students who needed extra guidance, tutoring them one by one. But he also started noticing how his small acts of kindness were creating ripples. The girl had begun helping other students. She offered her seat to those who struggled, shared pencils, and even helped younger students find their classroom. The teacher watched her with a mixture of pride and quiet astonishment. He never expected the little girl's growth to spread so naturally to others. One afternoon, the school announced a small exhibition where students could present their creative work. Everyone was excited, and the little girl ran around, helping her classmates put up drawings and papers. The teacher followed, quietly guiding her when needed. She had spent days preparing a project, an essay she wrote herself. She titled it, "The Teacher Who Reminded Me of My Mother." When the teacher read it, he felt his chest tighten. The words were filled with honesty, gratitude, and the deep innocence of a child who had experienced loss but was learning to hope again. She wrote about the first time he stayed late after school to talk to her, how he had listened without judgment, and how he had given her the courage to believe that life could still be beautiful. On the day of the exhibition, parents began arriving. The little girl's father was there, standing near the back, his eyes scanning the room. He had heard about the essay from the principal, and curiosity had drawn him here. He didn't expect to be so moved. When he read the essay himself, he felt a strange mix of emotions: regret, sorrow, admiration, and awe. He had been so consumed by work that he had missed the depth of his daughter's pain. And yet, here was this humble teacher, someone he had barely known, who had reached her heart when he could not. The little girl approached him shyly. "Daddy," she said softly, "this is my teacher. He helped me." The man looked at the teacher, and for the first time he saw not just a man in a worn-out shirt, but someone extraordinary. He saw patience, kindness, and a depth of care that went beyond words. He extended his hand. "Thank you," he said simply. The teacher shook it quietly. "I just helped where I could. She's the one who made it easy. She's strong and brave." The man nodded, his voice soft. "I see that now. I wasn't there when I should have been." "But you were. And I want to understand. I want to be part of her life properly." That night, the teacher returned home, his mind still on the exhibition and the essay. He thought about the little girl, about her laughter and her tears, and about the small, quiet ways that people can change each other's lives. He realized that what he had done for her was more than teaching. It was about being present, noticing the little things and showing care even when no one else would. Meanwhile, the little girl's father began to change. He started spending more time at home, asking about her day and listening to her stories. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself began to crumble. He realized that his daughter had found in the teacher something he could not yet provide, a patient, understanding presence. And he felt a deep gratitude for the man who had cared for his child without expecting anything in return. At school, the teacher continued to observe the little girl's progress. Her confidence grew steadily. She answered questions without hesitation, participated in group activities, and even began helping her classmates solve problems. One day, he noticed her comforting a younger student who was struggling with reading. Her voice was soft, encouraging, and full of the care that he had modeled for her. During lunch one afternoon, the teacher asked her, "Do you remember when you first cried in my classroom?" She nodded. "Yes, I felt so lonely back then. But you stayed with me. And now?" he asked gently. "Now, I feel like I can face things," she said. "I still miss my mother, but I feel stronger. And I want to help others too." He smiled, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. "That's wonderful. Helping others makes the world a little brighter, doesn't it?" "Yes," she agreed. "And it makes me happy too." Her father had noticed these changes as well. He started asking her about her day in detail, listening to her stories with genuine interest. He watched her laughter grow more natural, and he began to realize that while he had provided material comfort, it was the teacher's care and attention that had truly helped her heal. One day, the principal called the teacher into her office. "Your work with her has been remarkable," she said. "Not only has she improved academically, but socially as well. She's growing into a confident, kind child. Her father has asked to meet with you again." The teacher nodded quietly. "I only did what I thought was right." "She needed someone to listen, that's all." The principal smiled. "Sometimes listening is the most important thing anyone can do. You've done more than you realize." When the teacher met the girl's father again, the atmosphere was different. The man no longer carried the formal, distant air he had before. He seemed softer, more present. He spoke about his regrets, his desire to reconnect with his daughter, and his admiration for the teacher. "I owe you more than I can ever express," he said quietly. "You gave her the attention and care I couldn't. And I want to make sure your work reaches more children. If there's anything I can do to support you, I want to help." The teacher shook his head. "I didn't do this for support. I did it because it was needed, but if we can help more children together, then that would be wonderful." Over the next few months, the father and the teacher began working together quietly. He provided resources for extra books, art supplies, and tutoring sessions for children who needed them most. The little girl continued to thrive, her laughter filling the classroom and her kindness touching other students. One afternoon, the teacher noticed her sitting quietly, drawing a picture of a tree. He walked over and asked, "Why a tree today?" She looked up and smiled. "Because trees protect people, remember? My mother said that, and I want to be like that too. I want to help others and make them feel safe." The teacher felt a lump in his throat. The girl had learned more than lessons from books. She had learned empathy, care, and the quiet strength of kindness, and she was spreading that gift to everyone around her. That evening, the teacher returned home tired but content. He placed the little girl's notes and drawings carefully in his drawer, as he always did. He thought about the small ways that life could change when someone chose to care, when someone chose to be present. Even in small moments, he realized that the little girl's story was not just about loss, sadness, or loneliness. It was also about hope, resilience, and the power of simple acts of kindness. She had taught him as much as he had taught her, reminding him that even in a world that often seemed unfair, love and care could create miracles. The little girl's father continued to support her growth, slowly learning how to show his love in ways she could understand. He watched her blossom, realizing that true connection required time, attention, and patience, the same qualities the teacher had shown. Through it all, the teacher remained humble. He did not seek recognition or reward. He was content knowing that his presence had helped a child find her strength, and that his small acts of care had reached farther than he could have imagined. The bond between the little girl, her father, and the teacher became stronger, forming a quiet triangle of trust, care, and understanding. Each of them learned something important, that love could be expressed in many ways, that listening was a form of healing, and that kindness, even when unnoticed, could ripple through lives in profound ways. And so the days continued. The school remained a place of learning, laughter, and small miracles. The teacher stayed late, helping children grow. The little girl thrived, learning to love, to give, and to smile again. And her father, once distant and busy, learned the quiet power of attention, presence, and gratitude. Through these small, human moments, all three discovered that life, even when marked by loss, could be filled with hope, kindness, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Time passed quietly, almost like a gentle stream moving through a calm valley. The little girl continued to grow, both in her studies and in her heart. She had started speaking confidently in class, helping younger students and sharing her kindness in small ways that were noticed by everyone around her. The teacher watched her with quiet pride, remembering the first time he had found her crying in the empty classroom. He could hardly believe how far she had come. Her father, too, was changing. He had begun to understand what it truly meant to be present for someone. No longer did he spend hours lost in his phone or trapped in meetings, while his daughter longed for him at home. He began leaving work earlier, attending school events, and simply spending time listening to her stories. He asked about her day, her friends, and her small victories, and he celebrated each one as if they were his own. One evening, after school, the little girl stayed behind once again, though this time she was laughing softly at a small joke the teacher had made. The black car waited silently outside, but she seemed reluctant to leave. "I don't want to go yet," she said softly. The teacher smiled gently. "You don't have to go yet. Let's sit for a while and talk." She climbed onto the bench beside him, holding her notebook. She opened it and began to show him her drawings. Some were of trees, some were of houses, and some were of people smiling together. Each drawing seemed to carry a piece of her heart. "You've been very busy, haven't you?" he said, looking at the pages. She nodded, eyes shining. "I like drawing, and I like helping others too. It makes me happy." "That's wonderful," he said. "Kindness has a way of coming back to you, you know. When you help someone, even in small ways, it changes their life and it changes yours too." The girl looked up at him thoughtfully. "Do you think my father sees that?" The teacher hesitated for a moment. He wanted to say yes, but he also knew that understanding sometimes took time. "I think he's learning," he said softly. "Sometimes people don't notice at first, but when they do, it changes everything." That evening, the father walked into the classroom. He had come earlier than usual, hoping to spend a little extra time with his daughter. When he saw her sitting with the teacher, showing him drawings, he paused for a moment. There was something in the way she smiled at the teacher, the trust and comfort she showed, that moved him deeply. "Can I join you?" he asked quietly. The little girl's face lit up. "Yes, Daddy," she exclaimed, holding out a drawing for him. The teacher smiled, quietly stepping back. This was their moment, the bridge between the father and daughter that he had helped build. He watched them sit together, laughing softly, sharing stories and looking at drawings. The man asked questions, listened carefully, and offered gentle encouragement. For the first time in many months, the father felt truly connected to his daughter. He realized that love wasn't just about providing material things or being around physically. It was about attention, presence, and the small gestures that showed someone they mattered. Over the following weeks, the teacher noticed a remarkable change. The girl would speak excitedly about her father at school, sharing small moments they had spent together. She spoke of the games they played, the stories he read to her, and the times they laughed together. Her confidence had grown, and her joy had become contagious. One afternoon, as the teacher walked through the empty classroom, he found a note on his desk. It was in the girl's handwriting. "Thank you for helping me find my smile and my family again. I will never forget you." He felt a lump in his throat. He carefully placed the note in his drawer, along with the others he had collected over the months. Each note, each drawing, each smile had become a part of his life, reminders that his small acts of care had made a real difference. The father, too, began to express his gratitude in small ways. He brought books for the classroom, provided art supplies, and even organized small educational trips for the students. But more importantly, He continued to learn how to be present in his daughter's life. He attended school events, cheered for her during competitions, and made a point to spend quality time together. One rainy afternoon, the teacher stayed late with the little girl again. She had finished her homework and was quietly drawing. The rain tapped softly against the windows, creating a peaceful rhythm. "Look," she said, holding up her drawing. "It's a tree with a house beneath it. The tree protects the house just like my teacher protected me." He smiled, feeling a quiet warmth in his chest. "It's beautiful, and I think you're learning how to be a tree too. Strong, kind, and protective of those around you." She nodded seriously. "I want to be like that." "You already are," he said softly. The father arrived shortly after, holding an umbrella. He looked through the window, watching the teacher and daughter interact. For a long moment, he stood silently, realizing how much this man had shaped his daughter's life. He stepped inside, carrying a small gift, a set of art supplies for the classroom. "I wanted to bring something to help more children, just like you helped my daughter," he said, placing the supplies on the table. The teacher shook his head. "You don't need to do this. You're already helping her every day by being present." The man smiled gently. "Consider it a small way to say thank you, and maybe it will help other children who need someone to care for them." Together, the three of them sat in the classroom, sharing stories, laughter, and quiet moments. It was not just a teacher, a student, and a father. It had become a small family built on trust, care, and kindness. As weeks turned into months, the little girl's confidence continued to grow. She began helping students who struggled, comforting friends who were sad, and sharing her small joys with everyone around her. The teacher watched with pride as she blossomed into a kind and strong young girl, knowing that the smallest gestures of care had created ripples that would last a lifetime. Her father continued to support her, learning the delicate art of patience, attention, and love. He attended school events regularly, spoke to her teachers, and spent evenings reading and drawing with her. He understood now that being a parent meant more than providing material things. It meant being emotionally present, listening and cherishing the little moments. One day, the teacher received a letter from the father. It was simple but heartfelt. "Thank you for helping my daughter find her smile again. You've not only changed her life but mine as well. I will never forget your kindness." The teacher smiled quietly, placing the letter alongside the notes and drawings he had collected. Each one was a reminder that kindness, patience, and care could create change in ways that money or power never could. The little girl, too, had learned lessons she would carry for a lifetime. She understood the value of compassion, the power of listening, and the strength that comes from helping others. She had learned that even in the face of loss and loneliness, love could be found in unexpected places. The father, the teacher, and the little girl continued to grow together. Their bond was quiet but strong, built on trust, understanding, and shared experiences. They celebrated small victories, comforted each other during challenges, and found joy in the everyday moments that too often go unnoticed. One evening, the little girl handed the teacher another drawing, a small tree with 3 people beneath it smiling and holding hands. "This is us," she said softly. He looked at it, feeling a lump in his throat. "It's beautiful, and it's perfect. You've captured something very important, how love and care can grow between people even when life is hard." "Yes," she said, "and I want to keep growing like this, helping others, being kind, and making people happy." The teacher nodded quietly. That's the best way to live. Her father, watching them, felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that his daughter's happiness, her confidence, and her kindness were not gifts he had provided alone. They were gifts nurtured by someone who had given selflessly, who had seen a child in need and acted without expecting anything in return. Through the quiet passage of time, the teacher's simple acts of kindness had reached far beyond what he could have imagined. A small weeping girl had been transformed into a confident, compassionate child. A father had learned to connect with his daughter, to love her openly and to cherish every moment. And a teacher had quietly witnessed the power of care, patience, and presence to change lives. The story of their lives was not about wealth, titles, or recognition. It was about human connection, about the quiet acts of kindness that shape hearts and create hope. And it was a story that would stay with them forever, a reminder that even the smallest gestures, when done with love, can leave a mark that lasts a lifetime. The little girl continued to thrive, The father continued to grow as a parent, and the teacher continued to nurture the lives of children around him. Together, they showed that love, care, and attention are the most powerful tools we have. And every time the little girl looked at the teacher, she remembered that day when someone had noticed her tears, had listened to her, and had helped her find her smile again. That smile became a bridge, connecting hearts, healing wounds, and creating a family built not by circumstance but by love, patience, and kindness. The story ended not with a grand event but with simple moments. Laughter shared, hands held, lessons learned, and hearts healed. And in those quiet moments, everyone involved realized that the most important thing in life is not wealth or recognition, but the ability to see, to listen, and to care. Because it is in these small, human acts of love and kindness that true miracles happen. And in that small school, in the lives of 3 people, a miracle had quietly unfolded.